Sheila began her career with Amoco Canada, where she held various reservoir engineering positions in both exploitation and exploration teams across the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin. She was the senior technical lead for reservoir engineering in the Deep Basin assets. In 2003, Sheila joined ConocoPhillips as a reservoir engineer in the South Asset team. She has held numerous roles, including Chief Reservoir Engineering from 2007 to 2009. Following this assignment, Sheila managed a reservoir engineering specialist team, providing project analysis and ensuring technical excellence across the organization. Most recently, Sheila has served as manager of resource plays for the Canadian Exploration Group, a role that has involved significant investment decisions across Western Canada and into the central Mackenzie Valley. In addition to her technical and business roles, Sheila has spent time helping young engineers design their early careers as a career coach and mentor. Karen Kelly is here on behalf of Suncor. Melanie Weber from Suncor was slated to attend today but couldn't make it, so we have Karen Kelly in her place, equally as amazing. Karen is the Director of Project Delivery Transformation in Suncor's Energy Major Projects Group. She has 15 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. She started her career with Petro-Canada and held various facilities, production, and reservoir engineering roles in the natural gas business unit. Since then, Karen has held a variety of leadership roles within Suncor Energy's North America onshore and major projects groups. She has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Memorial University and is a registered professional engineer. Kim Tulloch, our third presenter today, is currently the Surface Facilities Team Lead for BP Canada. She has over 15 years of experience working in BP's natural gas, liquids, gas, and oil sands businesses. She has held a variety of roles, including project engineering, operations management, major project engineering, and health and safety. Kim has a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Alberta and an MBA from the University of Windsor. She is also an accredited project management professional. Let's give a warm welcome to this distinguished panel. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to offer a question to each of you, and we'll go through the panel and hopefully get some fantastic insight. So our first question for Sheila: why did you choose an engineering career?
That's it. Yeah, probably the same reason each of you did. That was a long time ago, first of all, and I was twiddling my thumbs through my grade 12 year and kind of wondering what to do with myself. And my father said, "What are you taking at university?" And I said, "Nothing, Dad, I'm not going to university." Whereupon he corrected me and told me that I needed to have an attitude adjustment and figure out what I was going to do. So long story short, I was quite good in maths and science, and I wanted to look for, because I was focused not so much on the university part, but on the getting a job and earning money part, I wanted something that would give me a career at the end of my degree, and so applied sciences was the ticket. It played to my strengths, and at the end of a 5-year university degree, I had a job, and that was of primary importance to me.
Thank you very much. Kim, what are your key career highlights to date?
I think it kind of depends what perspective you look at it from. I'd say, if you're kind of looking back just purely as an engineer, for myself, I'd say the key one is when I took on an operations management role at running a fractionation plant. For me, that was a great experience, and and I learned a lot, and there was a lot of responsibility. On the other hand, I wasn't married and I didn't have children, so I could devote a lot of time to it. I'd say as time has gone by, the ability to manage, some days better than others, your home life and your work life, and to try and get the most out of each of them without the other one suffering too much is probably where I'm at right now.
Thank you. Sheila, Karen, how would you describe the differences between women's leadership style and men's leadership styles? And this is a good question. If the other two of you have something you'd like to add, we can go there.
I get the tough question. I actually try not to focus on the gender when I'm sort of encountering someone at work. I try more to take the approach of, okay, what is the leadership style of this individual? How does that mesh with my leadership style, and how do I need to adapt so that we can sort of come to a win-win situation? So that's really been what the focus has been for me on my leadership journey, is focusing myself on how I can hone my adaptive leadership skills, and looking at it more from an individual perspective as opposed to the gender.
Do you guys want to add something?
I would just say, when I read that question, oh goodness. And again, I don't really think that, I would look at someone, same sort of thing, and say, oh, well, because they're a woman. So I think the two my most recent examples of when I've worked with women in leadership positions, they have tended to be more kind of looking for consensus in the group. Not that they couldn't make a decision, but they were taking all that input and then they would make the decision. Now, I'm not sure that that's because they were women. That may be because of the group they were in. One of them was younger, and so she's dealing with a lot of more experienced people, so she was taking that input. And the other one is in a role where she's not a technical expert, so she was taking a lot of that input. That if you were to say men versus women, I'm not sure it's that distinct, but those were two examples of someone I've seen it done well, is just taking in all that information and using that information to make your decision at the end.
So that's really interesting. The two perspectives are really interesting, and I think it actually speaks to, although I think there are way more similarities in leadership style than there are differences, that would probably speak to the one key difference that I notice around my organization, and that is the adaptive and collaborative style that typically, in a broad generalization, you can say women do better than men. I think the other differences in leadership that we notice are to do with communication styles, where men tend to want to share information, and again, this is a broad generalization, but you will observe men coming into meetings. They're sharing information to demonstrate knowledge. Women tend to share information to get everybody on the same page and to actually find that way forward where we're collectively working for an end goal. So I think there are some very subtle differences there, but by and large, we have similar leadership styles because we're all mentored and trained by both genders, and typically more men, I would say, than women.
Sheila, another question for you. How do you help grow female leaders in your company? And on the same token, what is your company doing as a whole to help grow female leaders?
So I happen to be on the senior leadership team for the company, and we have a diversity initiative in general. My role in the diversity initiative is on the gender diversity steering committee, and we have quite a number of initiatives right now where we've been doing some statistical analysis to try to understand if we have maybe unintended bias in our organization, and we're looking to train and bring in training for all leaders in our company, as well as specific targeted training for folks that are hiring and targeted training for women in general. And we're looking at areas of gender bias and talent management processes, opportunities to make sure that our promotion practices and our candidate choice practices are without bias. So those are the sort of corporate things we're doing. On a personal note, I mentor and coach quite a number of people, and they are at all different levels of their career and in all different facets of our business. So I did spend quite a number of years working with early career engineers as we brought them into our organization, helping them find the right path through the first 3 to 5 years of their career. And some of those folks are now actually in leadership positions themselves, and I still have mentorship relationships with them. So I tend to pick up more and rarely drop them off the other side, but it's something that I have a lot of passion for.
Kim, how were your gifts of leadership developed while you, as your career has progressed?
I think the first bit, or at least in the early years, you spend a lot of time just building your foundation and building your core strengths and understanding your business. I spent for the first 6 or 8 years, I was out in Sarnia, Ontario in the field, and just building that skill set. And one, it gives you that technical basis to work from, but then it also helps you understand and gives you general knowledge of the work that you're in. But it also informs you of the areas that you don't really know that well, so that anywhere you need to go out and get help, or you need to get somebody else who knows better. So I think it builds your foundation as well as helps establish your boundaries, and you kind of know when you're out of your comfort zone. And then as you progress on and kind of more of your middle levels of your career, then you start trying more of these where you're an actual leader, not just a frontline delivery person, where you're taking an idea and you're moving it forward, where you're trying to influence people, whether it's through direct reports or through people that you work with on a team. You're trying those different skill sets. And testing out what works, what doesn't work, and continuing to find challenges to work through as you go forward.
Karen, what leadership strengths do you see women bringing to the table?
It's come up a lot in today's discussion, but I think women really, I think, have a real natural ability on establishing relationships or establishing teams. And I think the naturalness comes in, at least in my experience, and good leaders, good female leaders that I've seen, they do that in such a way that it's very inclusive and it's very collaborative. And I think the end result there is that there are diverse teams, and not just gender diversity, but just truly more diverse ways of thinking. And I don't know why it is that's natural, but it just seems to be sort of a natural thing. So that's the big thing that I think that female leaders bring to the table.
Thank you. All right, so we have 2 final questions, and I'll have both of you address, or all of you address both of them. The first question: how have you navigated work and family, and is that smooth sailing? Sheila? Sheila, do you want to give that a shot?
Sure. So the how is an interesting answer for me. I decided relatively early on that I wasn't going to try to do both. And when I had my first child, I worked part-time for a couple of years, juggling and trying to figure out how to do it all. When I had my second, I said, that's it, I'm not doing that anymore. So I actually made a choice to step away from my career, and I was out of the workforce for 12 years. And that proved challenging. But what it allowed me to do was devote myself to my family, and that was my personal choice. I think everybody has to make their own choice. Like, you can't really be told what to do. You have to figure it out yourself. So I was able to devote myself to my family, and when I decided I was ready to come back to work, it took about a year of cold calls and pounding the pavement and looking for opportunities, but I landed a job, And I didn't look back. By then, my eldest was 14. She was all my kids, I have 3 kids. They were all very capable. The youngest was 8, 8 and a half, something like that. And they looked after each other. They were very steady kids, and I was able to devote myself to my career. So, you know, that's how I did it. I think that's an unusual, today would be an unusual approach, but you guys can weigh in on that.
I have 2 words, live-in nanny.
Oh.
I have two small boys, and the first one coming back, it wasn't too bad. I think, you know, because it's one. But once you have the second, then you kind of you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, and I did struggle a bit coming back. But again, you have to find what works for you, and I think there's a lot of pressure out there to try and be super mom, and I think you have to let things go. You have to pick the battles you want to fight. So get somebody to clean your house. Get somebody, bring in a live-in nanny, or get a nanny, or get a form of childcare that you're comfortable with, that makes you happy. And you know, and your house doesn't have to be super clean, and everything doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to go to every single event. So pick your battles. The other piece, you know, that helped was I recognized that when you come back after having a child, you leave as one person and you come back as another person. And particularly with the year-long mat leave now, it's, you know, you've spent a year with that child. Like, you don't know anything else other than spending all this time. So it's a big transition. So give yourself a break. You don't have to come into the perfect job. Your career is a long time. And nowadays, it's no longer just this vertical ladder. People take steps all over the place and do all sorts of things. So search out for what works for you. If you want to take time off, take time off. You can always change your mind. It's really got to work for you. It's got to be comfortable for you, who you live with, your family, and just keep trying to find that balance, and give yourself a break.
So my situation's a little different. I don't have children, but my husband works at the same company as me, and we have worked at the same company for probably about 10 years. We've been in the same business unit. We know the same people. So sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not so good. So we've actually had to lay some ground rules about, you know, work talk is done when the garage door goes up, and, you know, you get your 40 minutes to vent about something. And so that's really the approach we've taken is, you know, again, going back to what works for us as a family is really establishing some of those ground rules, because the tendency is that it can be sort of very all-consuming when you both work at the same place.
Thank you. Those different perspectives are very interesting. So just to wrap up, if there's anything that you 3 would like to add in terms of women and leadership and how to do it and where we're going, anything else?
So the one comment I'd like to leave with is we have made progress, but there's probably still progress to be made. And we're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it collectively together, but also by engaging men. And there isn't a person out there that doesn't have some male person in their life that they can go and have this conversation with. And I think it's an important conversation to have. I think we need to keep talking about it. For every father that's out there, they have a daughter that's sitting here in this room. And you have brothers, you have uncles, you have better halves, spouses. All of those people need to be engaged in the conversation. And I think the more we talk about it and the more we engage with men in the conversation and help to elevate the conversation to the right level, the more progress we'll make eventually. So that's get out there and talk about it.
Yeah, on a similar vein, I just finished reading a book called Getting to 50-50, and it's all about working families and how, but you're supposed how to get your husband to help out with childcare, etc. Turns out that it's all again on the mother. You have to ask for this help. It's like, it's always the mother. But and I think the same thing can be said elsewhere. Is echoing what Sheila said. We have to talk about this stuff and engage, and not in a kind of whiny, moany kind of, isn't my life awful? You know, people are dying in Syria. There's a lot worse things going on in the world. But communicate with people, share your thoughts. And it's not just women problems anymore. You know, it may be kind of labeled that, but there's a lot of men that are working 60-hour weeks that aren't too wild about that, and they would like to, you know, to spend time with their families. So how do they have those conversations with their bosses? Their daughters are entering the workforce. You know. So there's a lot of similarities, but it's been labeled a woman's problem, which might be a cross to bear, but it's also an opportunity to kind of bring these things to the forefront. And I think we're seeing more and more men, as the millennials kind of join the workforce, that, you know, they have similar issues. They want to be actively involved in childcare and other things, or you know, other facets of their life, not just looking after kids. So it's a good opportunity, and but we're not going to get there by just kind of nose to the grindstone, plugging along, doing it yourself. I think it's going to be a concerted effort.
I think when I was going through this question last night, and I reflected on, I sort of took the approach of, okay, the reaching back part of this panel, and what would I do differently on my 15 years as I reflected on it. And it came up in Rhonda's presentation this morning and in some of the questions this afternoon, that I wish someone had given me the advice, and maybe it would come out if we were talking about some of these things more, is just actually recognizing who you are, and stop trying to fit yourself, a square peg into a round hole, and kind of celebrate that. You know, I've had the opportunity to work with some leaders that are very unique. We are all unique. But I probably spent too much time in the first part of my career trying to fit myself to what I thought was a mold of the right type of leader, the right type of female leader, and, you know, looking for textbooks and training and that kind of stuff to tell me this is how you should be. And it's kind of, for me personally, only in the last maybe couple of years, 3-4 years, where I've kind of gone, you know what? No, like that's good stuff, but how can I sort of honor myself, because I've got a long way to go in my career, and jamming a square peg into a round hole for the next 15, 20 years is going to be pretty painful. So that was advice I wish I had someone talk to me about kind of in the first 5 years.
All right, let's give a very warm round of applause. We're making feedback. Thank you, Sheila, Karen, and Kim, for sharing your experiences. And thank you to your organizations for letting you be here with us today so we can learn from you. Fantastic.